Hello, welcome back to the studio. Well, today a Bob Ross classic. This time it's Pastel Sleeves, affectionately known as the Easter egg painting, because, well, it's full of lovely bright colours, really warm and yummy. You almost want to gobble it all up. I have a tape with an Easter egg later on, so when you watch the video, I'll get cracking. Happy painting, people.
So here's my canvas. It's a 16 by 20 and as you see it's got an oval attached to it. If you haven't seen the video on making an oval, I'll put a link here and in the description. I next want to work out where the horizon line is going to be, so I measure up 7.5 inches and I'll tape this. I stand back and decide how much room I need for a seascape and how much room I need for the sky. And I think I need a little bit more room or else I'm going to run out of room for the sand dunes. I think I'll lift this an additional ½ inch. And I know what you're thinking. There's no way the horizon looks straight, but it's a camera angle. It is actually level. I'm going to start using some Bob Ross liquid white oil paint for my sky, and I'll tackle the seascape the next day. So let's get started. I got some liquid white in a small airtight container for ease of use and an old Bob Ross landscape brush. The secret to this wet and wet oil painting technique is not to apply too much. And be especially careful when you've got things like ovals, because it's very easy to force the oil paint out under the edge, and that will make a very nice finish to your painting. So always avoid brushing out, brush in or brush around the edge. So I'll apply a thin, even coat to the area above the tape. And to test it, I'm going to use my fingertips. I want to see nice clear fingerprints, like these ones. You can see all the ridges, cracks and creases. Nothing's filled in. If it was, it'd be too wet. And don't forget to brush them out in case they show in the finished work. I want to use this brush again, but not with all the liquid clear on it. So I'll dry clean it on a piece of paper towel. Here's my palette. As you can see, I've got a range of yellows and other colours, but no sap green yet. If I get sap green in my cad yellow and get it on my sky, well, you can tell I'll be in a real pickle. Oh, I might also mention that I swapped the position of the yellow ochre and the Indian yellow. I put them out in the wrong order. Here you see why. I wanted to brush mix Indian yellow and cadmium yellow to make a rich, warm yellow colour. But this is a pickle alert. I start my painting, and right off the bat, I start to wonder, was this pastel enough? Remember, the title of the painting is Pastel Seascape, and that yellow colour just doesn't look pastel to me. But I'll dry clean my brush, and maybe it will come good. I'm going to blend my sky by using a nice dabbing action. I circle the yellow round and round and working out slightly, picking up a little of the liquid white as I go, and sure enough, it tones down the yellow colour a little bit. Without cleaning the brush, I go straight into some yellow ochre, and I'll add this to the outside edge. Again, you see that little tapping action. This is the same style of painting as Bob did for Rowboat on the Beach, and I quite like it. It gives a nice sort of burst effect in the sky, everything radiating out from the centre. I'll carry on tapping and getting that liquid white to mix in and to try and calm down my sky. My next colour is alizarin crimson, but just a touch, mind. It's a bright, strong colour, and I want sort of a nice sort of plummy red tone, almost sort of pinky orange. I think I've got just the right colour. Once again, lots more tapping, zigzagging in and out. And here you see my sky starting to come together. But for my next colour, I need a fresh, clean brush. This is one I used yesterday. Whoops, and that's still wet. So double check your brushes in case. I'll dry clean this on a piece of paper towel and get rid of all the surplus thinners. I want to use this to just blend my sky one more time. I do some very soft, gentle in and out strokes here, just to remove any brush marks. I think my old brush was maybe a little bit too bristly for this technique, it's quickly repaired. Still not sure about that yellow colour though. I think the next colour I want to do is a nice lavender tone. And for this I'm going to brush mix alizarin crimson and a speck of blue. And that's phthalo blue, which is super strong. As you can see, it doesn't take more than a tiny bit to get lavender. I'll start down here against the tape and see what sort of colour I've got. I want a lovely rich lavender tone, but I want to build this up slowly, and that's a top tip for you. You don't want to go too dark too soon, especially up here in the sky, where if you went wrong, it would be much harder to disguise. I want to put a lovely bit of sunshine into my painting, and for this, there's nothing better than your fingertips. This is my first go at adding some brightness. It's soon swallowed up though by all that yellow. I think I need to add some more. This is go number 2. No, still swallowed it up. Maybe number 3. I'll stay a little bit smaller with the circle. Maybe a little bit more. This is my 4th attempt, and I think I'm finally there. Now I've got a Bob Ross Floral Fan Blender. It's a very soft brush, and if you haven't got a really soft brush for this part of the technique, I suggest you try and get one. Even some nice soft makeup brushes. We don't want to move the paint too much, we just want to knock off any brush marks. It's time for some more finger painting, or brushes if you prefer them. I'm going to use my fingers to paint clouds and highlight them. And the first one is this lovely orange colour, cad yellow, Indian yellow and a tiny speck of alizarin crimson. There. And I want to put this going right into the edge of my sunshine. The reason why I like using my fingers is because you can do some really soft blends without moving too much of the paint around. I find brushes sometimes pick up more colour than they blend. Here you see I've worked several layers of paint. I used a little bit more crimson here. Once again, soft blends. Rub it into the background with your fingertips. These are coming out really lovely, but they need a touch of highlight. I've gone into some titanium white with a little bit of Indian yellow on my fingertips. And here you see, super gentle now. Just touch the edge of the cloud and leave the suggestion of a little highlight. I'll use that little soft fan blender brush to knock off any marks that my fingers leave behind. Once again, this is a very gentle process and it takes time to build up some layers. Now, as Bob would say, 2 hairs and some air, and absolutely no pressure on the brush. I wipe my fingers on baby wipes and dry them on a paper towel before going into the next colour. A little bit of lavender, but whoops, I picked up a little crimson. But it doesn't matter, I'll just blend it into the background. Add a touch more blue to my fingertips, and there you go. A happy accident produces a lovely cloud. Once again, just massage this into the canvas. Now, if you don't like using your fingers to paint, then please use a brush, but I suggest one that's not too worn. It'll tend to scrape off more paint than it applies. I add a few nice long stringy clouds to the top edges of my painting, but take care, you don't want these sort of drooping down into the centre too much. I'll also add a few highlights to these lovely lavender clouds on the horizon line. And when you're finished, take off the tape.
So here's my painting so far, and I'm pretty pleased with it. But I do have to sort of cover one little area of my painting, which I think affects a lot of artists. And it's the very, very first colours I put on. As the name suggests, this is a pastel painting, and yet when I stand back and look, my sky looks a bit too vibrant. That yellow colour, it really jumps off the canvas, maybe a little too much. But of course, until you have the rest of the painting on there, you don't know if it's too bright or not. So here's the question. Do I live with it? I think it'll be okay in the end, or do I start interfering with it? Do I start risking a pickle attack? So that's the question you have to ask yourself when you do your own paintings. Are you happy to settle with it, or will it bother you? I don't know the answer, but I'm sure you've asked yourself the same question many times. What shall I do? Gonna have to wait and see.
Just as before, I used liquid white for the seascape part of my painting, but don't worry about any paint that got over from the sky. As you see, it quickly gets absorbed. Once again, do a little fingertip test. Take special note, I didn't bother to dry clean my brush this time. I wanted some liquid white to mix in with the phthalo blue because it's so strong. If this is too pastel, well, I prefer that than it to be too strongly blue. I think this looks about right. I'll add a little bit of that dirty lavender colour in here as well, just for fun. Notice though, I'm still brushing in from the edge. If I don't get all of the paint covered right to the horizon line, it's okay. Maybe they are distant waves. So I'll just scrub as close as I can. I'll add a little bit more crimson into my mixture with some dark sienna. This is for the beach, but I think I've put a little bit too much of the crimson in there. This may need a bit of an adjustment. I stand back and have a look from the other side of the room. Yes, I think I'll put a little bit of yellow ochre into my mixture with a touch of white. I want this to look like a sandy beach. I think I'm about right. Yes, I think that's going to work. But don't be afraid to experiment with the colour of your beach. Lovely coral seas produce almost white sand, and some of the beaches in England, well, they're quite green. But you decide what suits your painting. But here's my top tip. Don't get it too pale. You'll see why later. Now, let's add some waves. And for this, I'm going to use a fan brush. And I'm going to go back into my dirty white colour. It doesn't need to be pure white. I saved that for later on with the main wave. As you see, I load my fan brush well. And I'm going to use little sort of dipping strokes here. I want to add the suggestion of some distant waves. Quite tightly grouped together in the background. I'll allow a little bit more gap between waves as we work forwards in our painting. But as you see, now it's just too pastel. This painting is proving to be harder than I expected. I'll scrape off this and add some more blue colour, but a touch stronger. Remember what I said, don't go too pastel with this bit. But it's a tricky painting to do, getting that balance just right. I'll reload my fan brush with white and a touch of yellow ochre. And again, I'll do those little dipping strokes in the background. This time there's a little more contrast between wave and sea. And again, I take time not to fill in all of the sea colour. I want a little bit of the blue peeking through here and there. And you'll see later on, I enhance that with a few more shadows. But keep on adding those lovely dipping strokes. Also notice I'm trying to get a bit of an angle going here. Dipping slowly to the right hand side.
So it's time to start planning this part of our painting, the wave. I thought, what better idea than to actually make you a 3D wave. I used to make these for the class so that they could see exactly what a wave looked like, but in 3D. It's very simple really. You have this central section here, which is the eye of the wave, and this sits back into the back of the wave. You have the foamy edge here, which is tumbling forwards. Inside the wave, you have the water rising up. This is what's actually tumbling over. Of course, by the time it gets past this point, you're into this area of the painting, which is the cascade, which is where the water has actually come round and it is now tumbled over and it crashes down onto the beach. Of course, there's a hole through here, which is what there is actually in a real wave. It's what the surfers like to do when they try and ride the eye of the wave. They try and go right back into the centre of the wave and let the wave sort of cascade over them like a tunnel. So now you understand how the 3D representation of the wave would look, so you need to think about adding all of the lights and darks and the movement of water when you paint your own wave. Let's get on with the painting. Didn't know I was going to make you models, did you? Maybe not.
So let's plan the position of our wave, and I think here would be the right place for the eye of the wave, about a third over to the left hand side of the canvas. Once again, I make that classic wave shape with that curved first, then that little sort of rising stroke here, and then of course that little piece across the top of the wave here, so it looks more like a saddle. That's it, the classic wave shape. This will be the cascade. Here's a little footage I took in a little lantern, and it shows the three features: the rise, the eye and the cascade. I stand back from my painting and consider how much gap I've left for the wave and the sand dunes and the beach. And yes, the wave is just a little too low, but it's easy to change. I pick up my blue brush, I just scrape off the excess paint and then rub it out and redraw the shape, but a little closer to the horizon line. Being able to change your painting at will is one of the prime benefits of using oils, and I encourage anybody who's a beginner to try oils. They're very friendly and very fixable. Now, to continue my painting, I have to use a smaller brush. Bob used a filbert, but I'm afraid I just don't have enough gap between these waves in the background. So I'm using a small synthetic flat brush here, just to blend out the area between waves, but I'm trying to retain some of the shadow. You'll see in a moment, I enhanced this with a little lavender colour. Way back here on the horizon line, well, there isn't much shadow to be saved, but I do my best. So here's that small brush again. I've gone into some lavender, and under the foamy crest of the wave, there will be a shadow. Remember, the light's coming from behind the waves, so the wave casts a shadow in front of it. If you have a look at some of the photographs, I'll try and put a few up, you'll see exactly what I mean. I'll also add a little foamy detail to the edges of the waves. Just gives a little bit more movement. It really brings your painting alive. Now, let's look at the main wave again. The first thing I want to do is remove some paint. It's a top tip. If you remove the excess paint before painting the eye wave, you'll get a much brighter, sharper colour. If not, they tend to get a little bit muddy. This is an ideal job for your fingertips. It doesn't take off the liquid white. Seascape white is titanium white tinted with ochre. You might have seen me use it earlier on in the painting. And here I'm using it for the eye of the wave. On a filbert brush, notice how I scrub this colour into the canvas. You see now how important it was to remove some of that blue paint. This needs to be bright and translucent, not muddy. So take care not to go back to the top of the wave. You'll lose that lovely bright colour. Here you see I dry cleaned my brush and added a little more light to the eye of the wave. As the painting progresses, I'll blend it a little with my fingertips and add more light if needed. Next I want to add the cascade to my wave. I've gone back into my Seascape white with my fan brush, and it's just this very short stroke here. I've loaded my brush well. Now, this takes a little confidence. Firm pressure, push, let the brush slide along, and then drop and come off quickly. I repeat the stroke. I load my brush again, overlap the last one, and then with a short flick, I lift off. Make sure you don't brush too deeply with this. You want to try and save some of the lovely shadow for the next part of the wave, which is the foam. I keep this nice and bright. I reload my brush with some more of the Seascape white colour, and using the corner of my fan brush, I just want to go in under the cascade. You see here that I saved that shadow just for this purpose, to separate these two parts of my wave. I'll repeat this step once or twice more to get the impression of some nice sort of crashing foam on a beach. This next part needs to be done with some care. I want to stay just above that little shadow line. Once again, using the corner of my fan brush, I just gently touch the canvas and bend the bristles. I want to leave just a little sort of speckle of paint. This area of your painting has a tendency to grow on you without really trying too hard, so be aware. a pickle alert can be averted. I'll carry on adding some foam to the top edge of my wave, but it doesn't have to be straight. I like it to have a few little dips in it as well. It sort of indicates the painting has sort of got some movement to it. Again, I want to go back in here and just add a little more shadow back in. I lost my little shadow line under the edge of the foam. In fact, I'll probably add some more shadow here on the left as well. If you look at the reference photograph, you can see that there are layers and layers and layers of foam and shadow and real movement. That's what I'm trying to capture in my painting. So add more layers and more detail and more shadow. Now, time to look at the beach. And for this, I've got some titanium white, a touch more of the yellow ochre and some Indian yellow and cad yellow, just to tint it. I want to remember that there is a base to my wave, the area where the wave meets the beach. I want to go to the left of it. As you see, with firm pressure on the palette knife and a little roll of paint, I really press into the canvas and let the paint sort of strip from the point of the blade of the knife. This leaves a lovely thick foamy edge. With the fan brush, I grab the back edge of this and I want to pull back to this line, but not up into the wave yet. We have to reach that line before we can go up. If we go up from the edge of the foam, well, it loses its perspective. So this all has to go straight back to the base of the wave. I'll come back and add a few more little details to that foam. Maybe a couple more edges here and there. This really brings my painting together nicely. If you enjoy my tutorials, don't forget to like and subscribe. The like is just a thumbs up and shows your appreciation for my work. Subscription is free. You don't pay for any of it. It just means that when I release a new video, you get to know about it first. I also like to hear from you, my lovely viewers. So if you've got a suggestion or a comment, drop it down below. Thank you. As you see here, I changed back to that little flat brush and I've now started to work up into the base of the wave. Finally, I'm at the point where the wave is rising up. As you see, I maintain that flat baseline where the wave hits the beach. You can add as much or as little detail as you want in this area. I started off with a little flat brush. It did quite a nice job, but in the end I changed to using my little liner brush. Again, still using some Seascape white, but still not really bright white, but getting there. I also add a drop of linseed oil. This really adds some lovely detail to the painting and really kind of gives the idea that there's lots of lovely foam here coming up the face of the wave and down onto the beach. I'll add some of this to the background waves as well. And with some pure titanium white, I'll add a few of these little dots. I like to call them movie stars. They're the ones that really catch your eye, but not too many. You know what these movie stars are like, a bit temperamental, and they end up fighting with each other. So just add a few extra touches of light onto the beach. I want to add a little more detail to the beach. Bob didn't do it on his painting, but I think it looks good. I've gone into some of the burnt sienna. I've also got some of the yellow ochre and white on my brush, and I just want to stipple this onto the beach. Just a little extra detail that you can add to your own painting. I think I might also go into a little bit of Van Dyke brown as well. Just add a few more little pebbles and stones. I think that gives my painting an extra touch of detail. But be careful between the waves and get into a bit of a smudge. I think I also want to start looking at the foreground, which is to make a lovely set of sand dunes. I've gone into some yellow ochre and some of that Van Dyke brown and dark sienna colour. This is an underpainting. It looks a bit sort of too dark really for a sand dune, but we're going to put some nice highlights on top of it. But I noticed that I've done almost like a symmetrical shape here. I'll make the shape on the right a little bit taller and break into the edge of my wave as well. Now, give that fan brush a nice dry clean. I'm going to use it in a minute to smooth down some of my sand. Speaking of which, I want some nice bright sandy yellow colours here. Again, Indian yellow, cad yellow, a little bit of the Seascape white, and with a very soft touch and a small roll of paint on my palette knife. Just let the paint break. Now, if you're not happy doing it with a palette knife, you can also use your filbert brush. But again, super gentle. Just drag it across the surface of that brown colour. Get some nice sand going. Another word of warning. When you're using a palette knife close to the edge of an oval, there's always a chance you might catch it. So take care. I need some nice shadow colours for my sand dune. A mixture of crimson, sailor blue and a touch of white to make a soft mauve colour. This is a complementary colour. In other words, it goes well with yellowy tones. They're opposite each other on the colour wheel. And as you see, when you put complementary colours beside each other, they really stand out. This is a lovely feature of my painting and one I really enjoy putting in. It's only small, but it can make a big difference to the finished painting. To stop my sand dunes looking like a mountain range, I'm going to smooth them down slightly. And for this, I'm going to use my fan brush. Again, just gently here. Bring those edges together, knock off any sharp points. As you see, it doesn't take much. I'm going to use the same fan brush to add some grasses to my painting as well. I'll give it a nice dry clean. And then pick up some more of that lovely yellow ochre and brown mixture I used on the beach. I aim for the shadowy areas at the top of the sand dunes and just stab in some of this nice brown tone. It'll create a sort of shadow colour for the grasses. It might not be easy to make it stick, in which case you can always scrape away a little bit of the sand dune colour. You can also see now why I wanted to save a little bit of the dark sand on the beach for the next step, which is to add some grasses. I've gone into a little bit of sap green, yellow ochre and a touch of white. It doesn't have to be a particularly bright sort of green colour for these sand dunes, just a greenish tone, and a few little upward flicks to create some grasses. For some nice detail, I've gone back to my liner brush, and again back into that sort of olivey green colour, thinned with a little drop of linseed oil. Here you see I'm painting using just the very tip of the brush. Create some nice upward strokes with a bit of a flick to it. Again, I'm looking for some nice motion. Now, I do apologise, I got my hand in the way and I covered up this next step. I'm actually using a few drops of linseed oil with some snowy white colours and a bit of yellow mixed into it. I wanted a sort of straw tone. As you can see, it really pops against that lovely beach. With that, I think my painting is almost complete. I'll stand back and see if anything needs a little extra attention. I think my wave could do with a little bit more sparkle. I've gone back into a touch of white and just given it a little bit of extra. You see, it now really stands out against the background. I did promise to put on some extra detail on the background waves. And with that, I think I have a finished painting.
So here we have it, my version of a Bob Ross classic, Pastel Seas, nicknamed the Easter egg painting because it's so jolly beautiful. And no, I didn't touch the sky again. I thought it looked perfect in the end. Talking of things in the end, where's my egg? Someone said my egg. You watch another video and I'll find out where my egg went. Happy painting.